Oh, good morning, everyone. It's such a beautiful, beautiful privilege to be here with each of you, and my heart is just so full as I look across this room. And I want to thank each of you for coming and for taking the time and for making the time to be here. And I want to bring you greetings. Earlier this year, I was able to be in the Americas, in El Salvador, and we had a gathering like this. And then not too long after that, I was in Australia, where there was another group of our family that gathered. And so from all over the world, folk like you are gathering and are sharing this wonderful, wonderful story of how Jesus loves surfers. And I really want to thank you. But I want to say something that's really struck me. So there's something really special for me about Hossigal, France. Because as Phil spoke about, in 2004, we were here. And some folk in this room are younger than 20. I know that I was sitting there watching Marnie play the bass and thinking 20 years ago he was probably like, 4 years old? And even then, God knew that he'd be here. And so for each of you, I want you to grab this. I want you to grab this right now. It is not by chance that you are here for this week. It is divinely appointed that you would be in this room to hear what Eric and others have to share with you, because he has a plan and a purpose. And it doesn't just go back to 2004. The symbol for the conference in 2004 was the French Huguenot cross, which I have tattooed on my wrist because of the impact that the French Huguenots have had in my land. And what's amazing to me as I sit here, I have a sense that this land somehow is used by God. There is some kind of connection with God and His power and His spirit here because of what I've seen grow out of this little place here in Hossigal. At some point in heaven, we're going to find out about that. But part of that story, part of someone else's legacy, maybe someone who died for their faith here, is why you're here. And it's the reason that you're here for these days. The King of all glory has something to say to you. And some of you are sitting here today and thinking, that's actually not for me. I'm not that person. I'm telling you it is. There's world changers among us, and you are them. And while I was preparing for this devotion, I felt, if you want to turn in your Bibles to Psalm 22, I wanted to share about the cross. The cross, right? Something that's a symbol. If you show a person the cross, it's a picture. Do you know that the cross was designed as an instrument to inflict pain and suffering on the worst humans? That's what its intended purpose for the Romans were. It was designed for the very worst of society to be shamed and die in the most horrid way because of their crimes. But even before that was designed, if we go back into Psalm 22, David talks plainly about the cross. If you read Psalm 22, it's the death of Jesus. It's the beginning of the passion of Christ. It's reflected hundreds and hundreds of years before the cross was even invented. If you go to the book of Isaiah, hundreds of years before the cross came to be, it's there to be seen. And if you listen to Lou Giglio and you look into the stars, millennia ago, the cross was a sign. And the cross has two parts. It has an upright part and a part that runs this way. And so the thing that Jesus came to do was for righteousness and justice. We forget that. In our world, we speak so much about love, and believe me, everything about the cross is rooted in agape love, in a love that has given itself. But the power of the cross is in righteousness and justice. You see, righteousness is a right relationship between us and the God of heaven. And what I want to say to us today as we begin this journey this week, that is where the reaching of every surfer starts. It's in your heart and you having that right relationship between you and God. Without that right relationship, if there's something broken in this space, there is nothing that can be done. And once the right relationship has been established, well then the justice of Christ, the ability for us to connect with other humans, our families, those next to us, those who have wronged us and those who maybe we have wronged, becomes restored. Because out of the righteousness, out of the connection with Jesus, out of the right relationship with Him, flows right relationships with each other. And I know that we have short time, so if we just want to go to that psalm, I just want to read it for us quickly. It's so beautiful. In this psalm, it's David talking. And at the moment that Jesus is put on the guard, he says these words, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? He is literally quoting this psalm. That is what he's doing. He's not crying out to God. He's quoting Psalm that was written hundreds of years before the cross was invented. Around him are standing Pharisees. Those Pharisees who are there are teachers of the law. To become a Pharisaic teacher, you need to know the first 5 books of the Bible off by heart. The Psalms would have been the easiest one of those books. Those Pharisees are standing there, probably one of them, Nicodemus, the one who came to Jesus 3 years before and met him in the dark alley, is standing there and he hears these words, Lama Sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me? And he knows, as in all the others that have condemned him, that he's quoting Psalm 22. And at that moment, they recall what Psalm 22 says. Why would you abandon me? Why would you remain distant, refusing to answer my tearful cries this day? And my deepest cries for help in the night. I can't stop sobbing. Where are you, my God? Yet I know that you are most holy. You are God enthroned, the praises of Israel. Our father's faith was in you. Through the generations, they trusted in you. And you came through every time they cried out to you in despair. You were faithful and delivered them. You didn't disappoint them. But I am like a worm. The word worm there is not referring to Jesus being a worm. It's referring to crimson. So they would take a worm in those days and they'd crush that worm and they would use it as a red dye. He's saying my body and my blood is going to be poured out. Crushed and bleeding crimson. Treated as less than human. I've been despised and scorned by everyone. This is literally happening. Mocked and jeered, despised with their sneers. As all people poke fun at me, spitting the insults. If we go and read John chapter 19 at the same time as you read this, go and read John chapter 19 and read this at the same time. As all the people poke fun at me, spitting insults, saying, is this the one who trusted in God? Now let's see if Yahweh will come to his rescue. Let's see how much he delights in him. Lord, you have delivered me safely from my mother's womb. You are the one who cared for me. And it carries on. And then if you go skip down to verse 14, now I'm completely exhausted. Every joint of my body has been pulled apart. My courage has melted away. One of the consequences of the cross is that your joints and your ligaments disconnected. I'm so thirsty and parched, my tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. Another thing about the cross is that you have crazy dehydration. They have pierced my hands and my feet 400 years before before the cross was even invented. Swirling around me with hatred, a band of evil men surround me. Verse 18. With a toss of the dice, they divide my clothes among themselves, gambling for my garments. Guys, this is insane. Do you know that the robe was something that couldn't be divided? And so when the Roman soldiers are getting Jesus' clothes, there's one piece, the main piece of clothing, that they don't want to tear into pieces. So they cast lots so that whoever would win that wins the garment of the king. And then the psalm changes in verse 22. I will declare your name before all my brothers and praise you in the midst of the congregation. You can go and read that. Actually, what's happening for those musicians, there's a key change in the second half of the psalm. It changes from a depressing psalm to a psalm that is fantastic. To a victorious kind of sound. And so what I want to share with you today is that, and I want to land it in what's really interesting is right at the end, Jesus says, in John, it says, it is finished. And that word, it is finished, in Hebrew is a homonym, which basically means a word that can be spelt and said the same, that has 2 meanings. And get this, this is where it gets crazy. Like, so, for example, if I say bear, a bear is something that's going to attack me in the woods if I go into the French woods here or somewhere, maybe in Norway. I don't know if you have bears. But can you bear with me as I share something with you? It's the same English word spelt exactly the same way with 2 completely different meanings. Well, the word "it is finished" in Hebrew is a homonym. It is finished means it's final and it's done, but it also refers to my bride. Think about that. Think about the power that is in what Jesus is saying. When he says it is finished, he says, this is finished. I have finished the work that was written 400 years ago in Psalms and whatever. But I've begun the work in my bride and my church, which will never fail. And the gates of hell will never, ever stand against it. And why you're here today is because he, the King of righteousness, determined for you to be here. There's the last thing I'm going to say. My 5 minutes is almost up. Is this. The Pharisees come to Jesus and say, what is the greatest command? And he says, the Lord your God is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. Righteousness. And the second is like unto the first. Love your neighbor as you would love yourself. Because in righteousness and justice, in that right relationship with God, flows everything that we will do as Christian surfers. It is the only way to reach every surfer. That is not our vision, that is his vision. It's not our mandate, it's his mandate. And his chosen people to do that are you, every single one of you by name. He loves you. He's so excited that you're going to be here. For some of you, he's got barrels lined up. For other of you, he's got amazing moments. Take these next few days and soak yourself into his righteousness and justice. Reestablish whatever is wrong in that relationship. And we will reach every surfer, not because we want to, but because he wants us to. Thank you.